hanging half 100 on them at Owen Field, or the run rules on the diamond at Loves Field. We're giving you the breakdowns, the bets, and the hot takes from the perspective of two former OU Athletics employees. You're listening to the Mainline Podcast with Tyler Burton and Adam Jaquez.
Let's go! Let's go!
Let's go. Welcome to the Mainline. I'm Adam Jaquez. It's one of the most important games of our entire lifetimes. Oklahoma heading up to Missouri after a win against Maine, and Oklahoma really trying to get into bowl eligibility there. Welcome back to my co-host, Tyler Burton. Tyler was in Mexico a week ago, crossed the border, and then voted. So, I don't know, maybe some scandal there.
Yeah, a little bit of scandal. Obviously, back from the honeymoon, got to spend the week down in Cabo with the wife. God, that's still crazy to say here 3 weeks later. But yeah, honeymoon was great. Oklahoma wins a football game for the first time in a long time, and we've got a little bit of positive momentum trending for the trip up to Columbia this weekend to take on Missouri. And yeah, man, things are good. Woke up this morning, the air was a little crisper, the sun was a little bit brighter. Last night was very entertaining for some throughout the country. And we'll just leave it at that. It was a good day.
Tyler, I want to get your thoughts just briefly on the Maine game. We're several days past it. It, wasn't the most entertaining game. It was fairly boring, but boring in some good ways. What's your just initial takeaways from that matchup?
Well, about 10 to 15 minutes into this game, my initial thought was, oh, shit, we're down 7-0. Okay, the wheels have finally come off. We're talking a lot more now about not just replacing an offensive coordinator, but possibly something bigger. But Oklahoma did settle in. And, again, take it with a grain of salt. It was Maine. But I think if you can take anything away from this, it's not necessarily, how well or how dominant you were over an FCS school. But I think the biggest thing that you can take away out of this game going into Missouri is that you were able to get some confidence in some of the young guys, whether it's a J.J. Hester who was able to, catch the ball, make a big play from Jackson Arnold, score a touchdown. Javante Barnes having his best game in an Oklahoma uniform throughout his career. It was nice to see them finally get the running game going. And I think that, probably if anything, I think that the best thing that you could take away from this was the fact that we saw probably this was the best overall offensive line performance all season long. And again, it's an FCS squad in Maine. I don't think that Oklahoma is going to be able to duplicate that, throughout this final 3-game stretch of the regular season. But I do think that it was nice to be able to see some of the young guys that we've been wanting to see them make plays all year long. It was good to see them go out there and actually make some positive strides. So again, it's just a matter of can they build on that with a good week of practice this week, and then see if we can't carry that momentum into Columbia this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, I think the goal going in was build momentum, build confidence, and both boxes checked, in my opinion, especially for Jackson Arnold here as we see him on YouTube going 90 yards to J.J. Hester. Wasn't the cleanest game, wasn't the greatest passing display ever, but he's working with very limited options in the wide receiver room and a tight end room and so forth. But I thought he did exactly what you would have wanted him to. He looked poised. He's not putting the ball in harm's way. Didn't do that against Ole Miss either. So I like the way that Jackson Arnold's playing. You like the way the run game was producing for the first time really in his entire career. It looked like Javante Barnes had some really good vision. And a big part of that was that, hey, the offensive line, the tight ends were just in the right spot in their blocking. And, yeah, you can say that's Maine. Like they weren't going to overwhelm Oklahoma once you got to that point of collision, but Oklahoma was in the right position to make the blocks and open holes. And so that counts for something at least. So, Javante Barnes is not going to be able to run around everybody in Missouri. If he does indeed play, he was on the availability report earlier. We'll talk about that in a moment, but I thought overall fairly solid, build that momentum. I think you have a ton of confidence going to Missouri, a matchup that Oklahoma has looked at from the start of the season and thought, yeah, those guys really shouldn't be ranked higher than us. Those guys really aren't better as a program than Oklahoma. They're not better as a team. Fast forward to now, a lot has changed, but I think the feeling is still the same that, hey, we should go in, we should win that game. Like we have a lot more talent still. We just have to put it together. And I can't remember who said this not that long ago, but when Seth Littrell was fired, it almost felt like, okay, now this is the real start of the season. Now is the real start for at least the offense in terms of, hey, like we're actually running a system and a scheme, and we kind of are just finished like our fall practice, and now we're getting into the rhythm of that. And I think we saw some continuation from the Ole Miss game into the Maine game, and hopefully we see even more of that going into the Missouri game in terms of just flow, run game, scheme, continuity, having an identity. I think we'll see a lot more of that going forward.
Yeah, I think not only is this a huge game, obviously for this season, but I think that this is a huge game. It's a tipping point, I think, for Brent Venables in year 3 here as the head football coach at Oklahoma, knowing what you've got coming down the pipeline in the final 2 weeks of the season, Alabama at home, LSU and Baton Rouge. This is not only Oklahoma's best remaining chance to get bowl eligible, but I think, you can realistically make the claim that this is a tipping point for the program, and perhaps I think that one of the bigger games since Brent Venables has got back to Norman, not because you're playing a rival, not because you're playing for an opportunity to win a championship, but you're 1-4 in the SEC, looking 1-7 in the eye, which means you're finishing the year 5-7 without making a bowl game. And it's actually kind of perfect timing. Haven't had a chance to check out Scoops Pod yet, but I just got the U40 notification, and the title of the episode is actually "Missouri is the biggest game of the Brent Venables era," which is kind of a unique question to kind of throw out there because ultimately this is going to be a matchup, Adam, where I think that Oklahoma fans, I know that Vegas definitely expects Oklahoma to win this game, with the huge momentum swing in terms of the betting line. I believe that Missouri opened this thing up. They were around a 2.5 point to 3 point favorite. Fast forward just a couple days later, now it's actually turned in Oklahoma's favor to where I believe it's Sooners -2.5 right now. So again, what are your thoughts on this in terms of, Brent Venables? Are we going too far out on a limb and saying that, this is this has a little bit more juice to it, even though we are coming into this game at 5-4, going up against the 24 ranked Missouri Tigers, because at least going into the season, I don't necessarily think that this was a matchup that, a lot of people across the country, a lot of people in SEC territory thought that Oklahoma versus Missouri was going to be, something that had a little bit of extra juice to it. But when you factor in a lot of the offseason, storylines, the Drinkowitz versus Venables, the NIL stuff, the recruiting, Caden Green, making the decision to leave Oklahoma to go to Missouri, get in the back. Theo Weiss is part of that program now. It kind of feels like this thing has a little bit of extra juice to it, but are we talking about it with it pertaining to these two football teams, or is this something that, these two fan bases are kind of going back and forth on social media? We've kind of concocted this thing up off the field.
Yeah. Brent had some interesting comments about like, hey, you can't sit here and be bitter about guys leaving. And I think that's an interesting comment, because it sounds like, yeah, there clearly was some upset about some of those guys leaving, specifically Caden Green, but also I think he moves on. Like he's absolutely right. Like, and I think Brent's the type of guy that's like, you just don't have time to like sit there and mope around about that. And this is a matchup between two teams coming in that it's still going to be feisty, but neither team is where they wanted to be at this point in the season. Obviously, like Missouri, really, we talked about before the season, they have a 3-game schedule. Essentially, they're 0-2 in that schedule so far. Alabama and A&M, and now Oklahoma. Not the heavyweight that we had hoped they would be going into this, but certainly a measuring stick game, I think, for the Tigers, and to not have their tail tucked between their legs like they did coming out of Tuscaloosa. Mm-hmm. This game, you mentioned the line earlier. It actually changed since we created this graphic earlier this afternoon. Oklahoma was -3. They're now -2.5 after flipping from Missouri opening as the favorite, which is really interesting because about 30 minutes ago from when we are recording here, the availability report came out. Brady Cook listed as questionable. Now, he's probably one of the first players that I've seen on one of these availability reports that was listed as doubtful going into Alabama and ended up playing in that game. Now he's questionable. I don't know that I trust Eli Drinkwitz necessarily with how he's handling that, because questionable is so vague. Like, you can just throw anybody on there for the most part and just play them or not play them. And you're not really going to get fined or punished for being inaccurate there. I think that's somewhat gamesmanship. I wonder if Vegas knows a little bit more about what's going on there. And if Brady Cook does play, I don't think it changes my opinion all that much about Oklahoma's chances here, because he's going to be limited. He's going to be limited if he is playing. He hasn't had the greatest year so far. I know a lot of people will point to Drew Pine and go, look how terrible he was against Alabama. He had a bye week. The coaches are not going to allow him to make the same types of mistakes he made against Bama. And I don't think Oklahoma's defense is good enough to force those mistakes. Early on, this defense was turning over everybody. Lately, they're not turning over hardly anybody. So and part of that is the offense isn't holding up their end of the bargain because late in games, other teams' offenses aren't having to strain to get in the end zone. They're already in the lead at that point. They can just run the clock out, essentially. So I think Drew Pine will be in more favorable situations if indeed he is the starter there. And I think Missouri's coaching staff will have him in better positions to not make catastrophic mistakes, which could still play in Oklahoma's favor in terms of, hey, they're going to play with one arm behind their back potentially. Like, okay, we'll probably be able to slow them down even more so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not quite all the way there with you yet in terms of the impact that Drew Pine could have on this football game. Now, obviously, the line being swayed 6 points. Obviously, Vegas knows something that we don't. They are obviously, that's pretty telling that they think that, Brady Cook is not going to be playing in this football game on Saturday. And even though, Missouri is coming off of a bye week, which is, something that Oklahoma's been dealing with all season long with SEC opponents. Every time they, face one of these new schools, they're coming off of a bye week. So I think that Drew Pine, can the bye week help him? Yes, maybe a little bit. Obviously, the game plan is going to be built around him. They're going to, figure out some more ways to be creative and getting Luther Burden the football, being able to get him 10, 15 touches for this game. Because if Drew Pine is the one that's actually playing quarterback, I think that that's severely lessens Missouri's chances to win this game on Saturday. And, if Brady Cook does end up playing, then I do think that this, it's definitely worth, possibly a 3 to 6 point, swing in terms of this game. So again, with Drew Pine at the quarterback position, I like where Oklahoma is at defensively. I think they've got all the makings right now, particularly with the front seven, to be able to slow down Missouri's offense. You just go through and you look at the injury report. You look at, Missouri's leading rusher right now. He's on the injury report. He is listed right now as I think he's questionable, and he's been dealing with a foot injury over the last couple of weeks. So we really don't know. And again, I enjoy the injury report that comes out a couple of times each week, but it also just kind of adds to it a little bit more. So but again, I fully expect this game to be a 4-quarter football game. I think that it is going to be low scoring. I think that Oklahoma is going to be walking into a hornet's nest where it's not necessarily going to be as severe as what we saw at Jordan-Hare against Auburn, but it is going to be one step up, or maybe 2 or 3 steps up from what Oklahoma experienced on the road in Oxford, Mississippi. So again, Missouri's football stadium, I believe it seats just a little over 70,000. Obviously not as big or as good as Oklahoma, but it's still going to be a ruckus environment. It has been sold out. They've been looking forward to this game, for the last 12 to 18 months. So I think that Oklahoma is going to have to be on their A game to be able to walk into this one and come out with a victory. So Adam, when you look at this injury report, obviously there was a lot of conversation that's been made about, is Oklahoma going to be able to get some help coming back for this game? Now, obviously, you're not going to get anything in terms of Jaden Gibson, Nick Anderson, Andrel Anthony, but Jackson Arnold on Tuesday night, when meeting with the media, kind of spilled the beans a little bit and teased us with there being a really good chance that Oklahoma's offense is going to possibly be getting Deion Burks and Jalil Farouk back this week, barring any setbacks, of course, throughout the week of practice. Kind of where are you at with these two guys, and just how big of an impact can it make on Oklahoma's offense this week?
Yeah, I really wish we would have had an injury report going into that main game. We didn't because it was not an SEC matchup. But I think we probably could have read some tea leaves of whether we saw Farouk or Burks listed as doubtful, questionable, probable even, or just straight up out. Instead, we're just getting that information at this point. So both players listed as questionable. I like what Jackson Arnold said after practice the other day. I think that sounds like potentially we could get one or both of them back. I have no preference on my end. I will take whoever it is that's ready to contribute. It's crazy that Deion Burks still, I think, leads the team, at least from a wide receiver perspective, in catches with 26. And Brennan Thompson has played 5 more games than him, is only at 17 catches on the year. That's absolutely crazy. Feels unacceptable. Not necessarily a knock on Thompson, but just the overall wide receivers that are playing. Jacob Jordan just now getting on the scene, and I think he's got 17 catches already. So it's crazy how things have worked out in that room, or really not worked out throughout the season. But yeah, I do think we will get at least one of them. And if we do, it doesn't matter. I think Jackson Arnold's confidence kind of shoots through the roof. I think he's already playing really confidently right now, but I could certainly see him slinging it a lot more and trusting whoever it is, whether Farouk or Burks or both, to go out and make some plays. And even early on, we saw Seth Luttrell in the offense find ways to get the ball to Burks. And so I think there could be a lot of opportunity for this offense to really expand what they're able to do through the pass game, screen game, so on and so forth, if we're able to get one of those guys back.
I think getting both guys back, that's a dream scenario, if that happens, that it has an opportunity to pay huge dividends for Oklahoma. If you're only able to get one back, it kind of sounds like Jalil Farouk is a little bit further along in his health progression compared to Deion Burke. So if you do get him back, how productive can he be? He hasn't played since the opening game of the season. That remains to be seen. You're making your return a couple months later, going on the road in a hostile environment, night game in the SEC. We'll see what happens. But I do think that it does give Jackson Arnold some confidence. It does give Joe John Finley as a play caller, I think, a little bit more creativity, a few more options, because he knows that he's got a guy that's played a ton of football in an Oklahoma uniform. He's been in some of these big time matchups in some of these, tough road atmospheres. So whether you get Deion Burks or Jalil Farouk, pray to God that you get both of them back. I think that does nothing but pay dividends for Oklahoma in terms of their percentage to win this football game. Now, on the flip side, Adam, if you throw that graphic back up there, looking at the injury report, the offensive line is another one where, this football team just can't catch a break. I don't know what else to say, Looking at this, obviously, Garen Hatchett out for the year. Nothing's changed there. Jacob Sexton, I'd be surprised if we saw him play for the remainder of the regular season. Jake Taylor, he's listed as out. That's another tackle position at a spot where you're already, significantly beat up along the line of scrimmage. So I know that there's a lot of I guess guesswork going on right now, but Michael Tarquin, he was out last week with an ankle injury. He was on the sidelines in a boot. Is he going to be available? Adam, between you and me, I would be absolutely shocked if Michael Tarquin suits up on Saturday. So, God willing, that he is able to suit up and start this football game. It would definitely be helpful for Oklahoma, but I don't think that that's going to be the case. And that puts Oklahoma in a situation where you're probably going to be starting Logan Howland and Spencer Brown at the two tackle positions. And God loving, but I mean, anytime that you've got to start Spencer Brown at a tackle position in the SEC, okay, he didn't look good at times against Maine. This is a huge level up in competition going against that Missouri defensive line. Some of those edge guys that they've got, that's got the ideal NFL type size. I think that Gabe Eicher did a really good job, talking about, even though that's been a defensive line that hasn't necessarily, been able to get after the quarterback. I think they're second to last in the SEC, only getting, I think it's about 2 sacks a game. They do have some guys that are, really good athletes, have got all the size and measurables that you want in your edge players, and that's not a good recipe for Spencer Brown. So again, we'll see what happens, but just looking at this injury report right now, if you're able to get one of these 2 wide receivers back, I think that does nothing but give Jackson Arnold confidence that they can throw the football down the field against this Missouri secondary. But at the end of the day, the offensive line, it's going to be another, I think, probably the 8th or 9th different starting rotation that we've seen in a game this year. I just don't think that it's going to be able to be able to come together well enough on Saturday for Oklahoma to have quite the offensive output like we saw against Maine just a week ago.
Oh, of course not. Of course not. Yeah. I was kind of mildly surprised in a good way that Michael Tarquin was at least listed as questionable. I kind of thought he'd be more on the doubtful or even outside. It's crazy how so many guys basically, Jake Taylor, I mean, I guess he's still nursing the same injury from the beginning of the year. Jacob Sexton, we really don't know exactly everything that's going on there. We kind of hear the rumors behind the scenes, but it's like this availability report has actually been easier for coaches to hide behind what an injury situation is, and not actually give out any information other than out, questionable, available, whatever. So it's frustrating because it feels like, I showed up at the stadium last Saturday and it's, Michael Tarquin basically has passed away. He's not going to play. Like, it's one thing after another. It seems like devastating injury. I kind of almost expect something to come out at 6 p.m. to Saturday night that, another player has just their arm's been chopped off and they can't play. Just something terrible is going to happen. It just feels like this team is snake bitten. And I know Jimmy in the chat there talking about Javonte Barnes showing up kind of unexpectedly on the injury report as questionable. And if he's not able to go, then we're talking about Taylor Tatum, who seems to get dinged almost every game. I mean, I don't know what's going on there. It's tough to be a freshman, I'm sure. Maybe that has something to do with it. And then it's probably a healthy dose of Sam Franklin at that point, because Brent Venables said yesterday that the plan is to redshirt, Xavier Robinson. So I don't know what the plan is if Javonte Barnes is going to play. Now, he's probably one of the guys, and I'm not saying anyone else on this injury report is taking it easy or anything like that. But if there is somebody that is is able to physically like walk and run. And, they're not going to hold themselves out at Javonte Barnes because this guy's given everything he has. He's not the most impressive player that Oklahoma's ever had, but man, he's given his best effort, and that's admirable, at least at the way the season has gone.
And, Adam, it's pretty interesting too. I don't want to say that there's a level of, false confidence or the fact that this Oklahoma fan base might be cautiously optimistic. The fact that Oklahoma is now the favorite going into this matchup up in Columbia on Saturday night. But I mean, when you look at this Missouri football team, and again, a lot of it depends on the health of Brady Cook. I mean, if he plays, then I would probably, go ahead and bet on Missouri. If he doesn't play, that just ramps up Oklahoma's chances of winning this game on the road on Saturday night tremendously. But I mean, you look at Missouri's schedule right now, 6-2 overall, 2-2 in SEC play. Their best wins are at home against Vanderbilt by 3 points, and they also have a 4-point win at home over Auburn as well. Now, on the flip side of it, and I'm not sitting here saying that, Oklahoma, it matches up really, really well against this football team. But when you look at the level of competition that Oklahoma's played the first, 8 or 9 games of the season, it's night and day difference compared to what Missouri's had to deal with through the first couple months of the season. Missouri's 2 losses are against 2 teams that, kind of are the only ones on their schedule that have had a pulse for most of this season, and that was Texas A&M and Alabama, and they were outscored a combined 79-3 against both of those teams. So like most SEC opponents on Oklahoma's schedule this year, Missouri is going into this matchup coming off of a bye. So obviously you give Eli Drinkwitz and that staff another week to prepare. I kind of view the main game as a little bit of a bye week as well. I really don't think that there was a lot of time spent on game planning really for Maine. Let's just line up. Let's run our basic stuff. Let's get some confidence for these guys so that way we're in a better position going forward into the Missouri week. Now, you look at this Missouri offense, Adam. We'll start with Oklahoma's defense when they're on the field, and we'll switch things over. Missouri's offense averaging a little over 27 points per game. That's good for 13th in the SEC, 1 spot ahead of Oklahoma, who's averaging just over 25 points per game. We know how bad Oklahoma's offense has been this year, okay? Missouri hasn't been that much better, and they've got one of the best players in the country in Luther Burden, kind of one of the early preseason favorites to win the Biletnikoff, a top 5 NFL draft pick. Oklahoma's going to have their hands full on Saturday with him. One thing that I will say, though, about the Tigers offense, averaging 400 yards a game, they're very balanced, 171 on the ground. That's 7th in the SEC, 227 through the air. Now, obviously, we've talked about the quarterback position. Is it going to be Brady Cook? Is it going to be Drew Pine? I just want to highlight this, Adam, because I know that you're a little bit more bullish on Drew Pine coming off of a bye week where they can build the game plan around him. Drew Pine played 6 of the final 7 possessions against Alabama, 6 of 12, 42 yards. He threw 3 picks. So 9 of his 12 passes were either incomplete or intercepted. So again, I know that Oklahoma is not Alabama, but we've got a pretty damn good defense in Norman as well that's going to travel on the road Saturday. Running back position, Nate Noel, 500 rushing yards this year, almost 6 per game. Has barely played the last 3 weeks of the season. They do have a pretty formidable backup in Marcus Carroll. We know about the wide receiver position with Luther Burden. Theo Weiss is actually the leading wide receiver for this football team by about 32 yards. So it's an above-average offensive line. They've struggled against the better teams in this league. The Aggies pushed them around. Alabama gave them fits for 4 quarters. I like how Oklahoma matches up stylistically against Missouri's offense.
Yeah. I just wonder if they're going to go turtle in the shell type game against Oklahoma, knowing what we are going to be able to put on the field on the other side of the ball in offense and just not take any risks, not allow Drew Pine to throw the ball if he is indeed the starter. Screen passes, runs, they have a strong running game still, even with Marcus Carroll being their, second leading rusher. I think he's still a solid player. So we'll see. Drew Pine hasn't looked like he has much of a running threat to him, but I just wonder if they say, hey, like, let's play field position. Let's put ourselves in a position where we're not going to make mistakes and give Oklahoma a short field at any point. And that's an opportunity to say, hey, like, Oklahoma's offense, can you beat us against our defense with a true freshman left tackle and, Spencer Brown on the other side on the right tackle, who probably shouldn't be playing at a place like Oklahoma,
shouldn't be on the team.
Yeah. So I just wonder if that's the type of formula Missouri may approach this game with, and that is probably their best chance to win if they do indeed have Drew Pine out there. And I know that sounds like, will they actually do that? But you got to think of it. They have coaches that are not Oklahoma's coaches. They're going to put their players in the best position to succeed, which we have not seen from our coaches offensively, at least through the first half of the season. Now with Joe John Finley, we're starting to see a few different things.
Adam, I think you make a really good point. Time of possession has been something that Missouri has done a really, really good job this year controlling throughout the course of the game. I want to say that they're top two in the SEC in terms of controlling the clock, controlling the time of possession. Oklahoma is a little bit more towards the middle of the pack. And I think that this is going to be a matchup that, at least on paper, I think that this is going to be a low scoring affair. Obviously, Missouri's watched the same amount of tape. They've watched Oklahoma all season long, like we have. They see the deficiencies and, almost the inadequacies of how bad Oklahoma has been for a huge portion of the season on offense. And I think that you're looking at a game, if Drew Pine does start, where it's all going to be about field position. It's all going to be about running the football. Not turning the football over. The kicking game, I think it has an opportunity to be a huge deciding factor in the football game this week. Obviously, Zach Schmidt is going to have to go out there and make kicks. Luke Elzinga, one of the best punters in college football, he's going to have to be a weapon for Oklahoma. Trying to pin Missouri's offense deep inside the red zone if the offense can't get it going. So, but again, I think that it is going to be a good matchup. But again, regardless of if it's a 75 or 80% Brady Cook or a fully healthy Drew Pine, I like how Oklahoma matches up defensively against this Tigers offense.
Just looking at weather report for Columbia on Saturday, it looks like there is some decent chance of rain throughout most of the day. And then around 6 o'clock, it drops to about 25% or so. So we'll see if anything like that impacts things, because especially if you're talking kicking game and field position, that could certainly come into play there.
Adam, on the flip side, when you turn it over, you look at Missouri's defense, and again, we have a pretty good gauge on, we think that Oklahoma's defense is going to be able to do what they've done all season long, keep Oklahoma in this game, hold the other team down just enough to where if Oklahoma shows any sign of life on offense, then they're going to give Oklahoma an opportunity to win the football game. Missouri's defense giving up 299 yards per game. That's fourth in the SEC. By comparison, OU is eighth. But you go down, you look at the schedule, OU has faced much stiffer competition, much better offenses all season long compared to Missouri. 17.8 points per game. That's top half of the conference. 135 rushing yards per game. They've got the number 2 ranked passing defense in the SEC. So that's something to keep in mind. If Oklahoma can't get the running game going.
Skewed a little bit, though, because of what A&M and Alabama did to them and how quickly they got up and didn't have to throw the ball?
Oh, absolutely. A&M absolutely torched them running the football. Yeah. And then, kind of a very, very similar to the Alabama game as well. It was 34-0. Alabama was never, under any type of pressure where they had to, consistently try to throw the football down the field to Ryan Williams or some of those other playmakers. And again, you look at some of the other teams on the schedule that Missouri's been playing: Murray State, Buffalo, Vandy, Boston College, Auburn. I mean, these are not world beaters in terms of offenses that can throw the football. Oklahoma has faced them, i.e. Nico, i.e. Jackson Dart, and a couple others as well. So again, I think that this is going to be an opportunity for Oklahoma offensively, that when you look at Missouri's defense, the weakness of their defense is their inability to get pressure on the quarterback. They're almost dead last in the SEC in terms of pressure rating, in terms of sacks per game. Now, that's a good stat. You would like to think that bodes well for Oklahoma, but you have to also talk about the inexperience and, kind of the uncertainty of how good can Oklahoma play out there on the edge of the 2 tackle positions with Logan Howland and Spencer Brown. You would like to think that whether it's Jake Roberts, whether it's Bauer Sharp, you're going to see a lot of 12 personnel. You're going to see a lot of inline tied in formations to be able to stay in there and help these guys out there against some of these edge players. But again, we've talked about it. Tarquin, ankle injury. I'd be shocked if he plays. Jacob Sexton's out. Jake Taylor's out. I really don't know where Oklahoma, where else you could possibly go if you're Bill Bedenbaugh, outside of having Logan Howland and Spencer Brown as your 2 tackles. It kind of sounds like one of the next man up, but behind those 2 guys is going to be the true freshman Isaiah Autry. So again, Oklahoma is very, very depleted at the tackle position, and you just kind of have to hope that, you build some confidence off the main game. You've got another week of practice where, it's verified that these are the 2 guys that's going to get a huge bulk of the reps. They're going to be starting. You would hope to think that these guys will continue to progress and take that next step forward going into Columbia.
I really do think the pathway for Oklahoma to win this game and have a lot of success on offense is to try to do what A&M did to them. Now, you're not going to actually do that because A&M has a much better offensive line, better running backs, just better offense overall. But I think you do want to try to just grind it out on the ground. And Oklahoma has had their best rushing performances of the season in their last 2 games, which is kind of interesting. Like, you could look at that and go, okay, it's Maine, it doesn't count. But then you have to look at the Ole Miss game the week before against what was that, the number one
rush defense in the
number one rush defense in the country. So it's like, well, you have to count that one more than if you're going to totally discount the Maine game. And I know people will say everyone's doing the whole caveat. Oh, we know it's Maine, but it's like, when has this offense throughout the entire season performed to the expectation of what they should, against a team? They haven't. Against Texas, they underperformed. Against Tennessee, they underperformed. Against Temple, they underperformed. They have not performed to expectation at any point throughout the year. So,
Adam,
there's something to take from that.
Oklahoma's performance on offense and how productive and efficient they were against Maine, that was better than earlier in the season against Tulane and Houston and Temple, when they were much healthier as a football team. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you would. The writing is on the wall. You can see that the progression is being made. Things do look a little different since Seth Luttrell has been fired, but I think that this is the week where you finally get to see, now that Joe John Finley, this is going to be his 3rd game as the play caller. There's going to be a little bit more installation. We're getting back to the Jeff Lebby style offense as opposed to the shit that Seth Luttrell was putting out there, forcing these guys to run. So again, if the offensive line can hold up, you would have to think that Jackson Arnold in this offense, they're going to be in prime position to possibly go out there and score some points. But Adam, I've got my 3 keys to Oklahoma's offense. I'll throw it back over to you, and then I'll give mine.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, run the ball effectively. Like, we talked about what they did the last 2 games, 528 combined rushing yards last 2 weeks versus 758 the first 7 games of the year. Like, just do that. And if you can get to that 150 mark and try to, push beyond that with combos of, Jackson Arnold, Javante Barnes, I think you're going to have to get Taylor Tatum more involved if Barnes is indeed questionable. But yeah, that's my really key to the game, is be able to run the ball effectively and keep the chains moving, keep yourself in short down and distance. And we've seen the offensive line seemingly improve. But yeah, I think this is a big prove it game of like, hey, things really are different and have changed.
Yeah, establish the run. That's, first and foremost, that's always your number one goal as an offense anytime that you take the field. So yeah, establish the run, build upon what you've done the last couple of weeks where you've gone for over 500 total rushing yards. Jackson Arnold has been much, much better since coming back from the Tennessee game in terms of taking care of the football. He's got to continue to do that on Saturday night up in Columbia as well, and make a couple of big plays, whether it's a long run, whether it's, having a big play down the field to JJ Hester or Brennan Thompson, or maybe even Jalil Farouk or Deion Burks. We'll see. But make some big plays, be turnover free, figure out a way to, average a little bit more than 4 yards per carry, run the football, control the clock, trust your defense. And I think that Oklahoma will have an opportunity in the 4th quarter to win this football game.
Yeah. Do you want to go through our best bets and come back to score predictions here?
Yeah, best bets, and then we'll come back around and Adam will tell us why he's so confident in Oklahoma.
That's right. So best bets here. We had 2 and 3 week for each of us. I am 3 games behind you with 4 or 5 weeks left in the season to catch up. So I'm not making a concession speech yet. I'm going to continue to recount all the weeks to see if I can find some extra wins here and catch up with you. But you are in the lead.
Adam, when it's confirmed and verified that you have lost, just wait until the next day to make that speech.
Too many election jokes here. Tyler, you're in the lead for right now. You get to go with the first pick.
All right, yeah, pick number 1 for me, going out to Big Ten country, which is kind of crazy to say Big Ten country out there in Los Angeles, but Hawkeyes going on the road to take on the Bruins. Iowa currently a 5.5 point favorite. With all the talk about, Oregon, all the talk about Ohio State and Indiana getting a ton of love, rightfully so. Iowa is kind of sneakily flying under the radar a little bit. They did lose a couple of games, but they've kind of found some offense to go along with what is consistently a reliable Hawkeye defense. And UCLA, they're banged up, not a good football team. I think that Iowa goes on the road out to warmer weather. Iowa covers the 5.5 number.
I like that pick. Caleb Johnson, and then the new quarterback, Brendan Sullivan, that they've changed to. He just looks different than what they've had back there before. Yeah, a good duo. My number 1, I'm going with Nick Evers. Remember him? He's leading UConn right now. -6.5 at UAB. The Blazers, if you're not aware, that situation is a total mess. I think that team hates him. I think the fan base hates Trent Dilfer. It's ugly. So Jim Moore has done a nice job with the Huskies so far. I believe they're already bowl eligible. I think they'll be able to win this game by more than a touchdown. Every game that UConn's won this year, I believe they've won by more than a touchdown. So I'll go with the Huskies there to pull out at least a one-score game.
I like it. Up next, I'm going to the Big 12. BYU going out to Utah. BYU's currently a 3.5-point favorite. BYU, first place in the Big 12 right now, playing really, really good football. That was not something that I had on my bingo card this year with how well the BYU has been playing. Utah has not been the same football team since Cam Rising has been out. I think the BYU does enough offensively. I think that this is going to be a tight football game, but I trust BYU's offense and their quarterback much more than I do Utah's. I think the BYU goes on the road in a rivalry game, and I think they cover that 3.5 number.
I like that. I think that's the Big 12's best rivalry, actually, is the Holy War. A little under the radar there, but not a lot of great rivalry games left in the Big 12.
I'm trying to think what else there is. I mean, you've got
Sunflower
TCU,
Showdown,
Baylor,
Farmageddon,
Sunflower Showdown. Yeah,
Arizona border war with Arizona State. Yeah, I think this is the best rivalry by far.
Absolutely.
And a great, beautiful uniform matchup on the field. I like that pick. I'm going with a team that I'm a little bit nervous about. Indiana at Michigan. I'm taking the Hoosiers minus 13.5. Indiana's like 7-1 against the spread this year. So it's like, I got to keep rolling with it if it's working for me. I don't think Michigan is that good. Indiana, I'm kind of waiting for the game where they let up a little bit, and maybe there is some look ahead to Ohio State, which is 2 weeks after this. But man, they're incredible as a football team right now. So I'll keep riding with the Sigs.
Andrew Babaloa, it's still not too late. Come home to Norman.
Yes, we could use you.
Pick number 3 for me, changing conferences again, going to SEC, going out to Nashville, South Carolina, traveling on the road to take on Diego Pavia and the Commodores. South Carolina, 3.5-point favorite, coming off of one of the biggest wins of the Shane Beamer era as the football coach of the Gamecocks. This almost feels too good to be true, but Vanderbilt, they're coming off of a huge win on the road or against Auburn. They own the state of Alabama now. I like South Carolina's football team collectively a little bit more than I do Vanderbilt. Pretty good coaching matchup in this one as well. But I think that South Carolina, they found something last week. I think the Lenore Sellers, Rocket Sanders, these guys build on what they did a week ago. I think that South Carolina goes on the road and they cover the 3.5 as well.
Did you see that the SEC shorts guys are going to be there as the Vanderbilt person? I don't know. I don't know if that's going to help Vanderbilt win or it's going to be like a huge distraction.
I just realized too that my first 3 picks are road favorites. So
I will keep the theme going with Iowa State minus 2.5 at Kansas. Again, this one's, I believe, at the Chiefs Stadium. So
that felt too good. That felt way too good.
It felt too good. I just don't think Iowa State's going to lose 2 games in a row. I think, it's really hard to win a game by just 1 or 2 points even. So I think the Cyclones regroup. I think they're the type of disciplined and physical team that I think will just overwhelm Kansas that has struggled so far this year. They look good. The last time we saw them against Kansas State, I believe they are coming off a bye week, but I just think Cyclones are a really well-rounded machine that had a weather game against Texas Tech, a team that can really score, and I don't think that's Kansas. So I think Cyclones will win this one a little bit more handily than a field goal.
Going from a good Big 12 team on the road to a really, really bad Big 12 team going on the road. OSU going down to Fort Worth to take on the Horned Frogs at TCU. I'm going first half line for TCU here. I can get this number at 7.5. Oklahoma State's really bad. Mike Gundy just continues to find ways just to make himself look like an ass in the media. And I think that they kind of punted on this football season, no pun intended. I think that TCU, this is a blowout against Oklahoma State. I think the TCU jumps on them early. Give me TCU minus 7.5 first half.
Talking to my OSU friends at church and elsewhere, it's amazing just how hopeless they seem to be about the program, because I don't know that they have money for buyout for Gundy. I don't think you necessarily fire him. I think you kind of give him
There was not a better program in prime position to take up the mantle with OU and Texas leaving to the SEC. And
especially with the roster they had this year, like they absolutely blew it with all those seniors.
Yes, veteran quarterback, veteran offensive line coming back. The returning Doak Walker Award winner and Ollie Gordon. But I don't know. I don't think he gets fired. I know that they can't afford the buyout right now, but I just don't really see any type of positivity coming out of Stillwater right now. And I'm not sure that changes going into next season either, unless some drastic changes, both personnel, them getting serious about NIL and the transfer portal, which I don't think that they're going to be able to do. They're not going to be able to compete against some of the upper echelon teams to get some of the premier players that are going to be in the portal, so that they can be a little bit more competitive next year. Go Frogs.
And it's interesting too, when you talk to OSU fans, like they have such a poor man's mentality about their program that's like, well, if Gundy retires or we have to fire him, we won't be able to get anybody good. And if they are good, they'll just leave. It's kind of amazing that they're still in that type of syndrome going on. I'll stick with the Big 12 here for my number 4 pick. UCF traveling on the road to Arizona State. Sun Devils favored by 2.5. I love what Kenny Dillingham has done there. Potentially one of the Big 12 coaches of the year in the Big 12 there. So another long travel game, which has not proved to be very successful for road teams this year. So I'm banking on that. I'm banking on Arizona State being just a better program here right now.
Adam, pick number 5 for me. Changing conferences again, going down to the ACC. Florida State going on the road up to South Bend, Indiana to take on the Fighting Irish. This is another first half line that I'm riding with here. Notre Dame, one of the better football teams in the country right now. They're almost a virtual lock to making it into the college football playoff. Florida State going from 13-1 to 1-8. God, what a turnaround it's been for Mike Norvell down there in Tallahassee. I love Notre Dame in this one. I think that if they come out, if they're focused, if they're energetic, if they're ready to go, this has a 35+ point win written all over it. I think Notre Dame jumps on them early. Give me the Irish minus 13.5 first half.
I think that's a good pick. And Florida State, a program that I don't know where the hope comes from. There's not a young quarterback that's, sparking and playing well. There's no new coordinator hire that will probably be, solving anything. So absolute mess in Tallahassee. I think that's a good one. My final pick, I'm going to the Big Ten here. Washington traveling across the country to Penn State. Under 45.5 is what I'm picking here. Both teams very good defensively. Probably going to be a low scoring game. I don't know how well Washington will travel here. Again, another game where you're traveling across the country, and the results haven't been great for those teams. So it is a late night game on the East Coast in terms of starting at 8 p.m. So maybe that helps Washington perform a little bit better, but I just think it'll be a really low scoring, both teams dragging it down into the mud there. So that's my final pick there. We'll see if we can gain some ground or if the lead continues there. Let's talk about
any reason why you and we fail to just go ahead and bet money line on any team that USC's been playing over the last month.
They're on a bye week this week, right? I know they're switching their quarterback, but
did he walk out of practice? Did you see that?
I did not hear that.
Yeah, they said that Miller Moss walked out of practice. I'm not sure how true it is. Media availability is pretty limited out there in Southern California, but not a good situation out there, and it couldn't have happened to a better guy. So we'll let it be. Adam, let's get to our predictions here. Oklahoma, Missouri, primetime kickoff at night, Columbia, Missouri. Give us your score prediction and why you feel so confident in it.
I do not feel confident in it. Just with all the injuries and not knowing exactly who's going to be playing, who's going to be playing hurt, so on and so forth. And I think game flow will be pretty important here, because if Oklahoma, has some early success like they did in Ole Miss, they go down the field, they score a touchdown. If Oklahoma can pair that early on in the first half with some stops, suddenly I think you could look at a situation where Missouri has to really get out of their comfort zone, throw the ball around. And Oklahoma's, rushing with R. Mason Thomas and crew and the rest of, Billy Bowman with maybe a lesser quarterback. Maybe that's an opportunity for Oklahoma to actually win. I don't want to call it blowout, but I'd say relatively comfortably, at least probably blowout by our standards this year. Like I'm talking no more than 20 points. But if Oklahoma's not able to get on the board quick, early, make stops, I think it will be a dogfight. And so I don't have enough faith in our offense to necessarily carry that out. And our defense, I think, while has been very good this year, still has some chinks in the armor that need to be resolved. So regardless of who plays quarterback for the Tigers, I think they will find, some opportunities to score, but I think Oklahoma is able to win a close one here. I've got OU 24, Missouri 20.
Yeah, Adam, I'm kind of on the same line of thinking as you. If Brady Cook plays, obviously I don't feel that good about it. I would probably pick Missouri to win the football game if Brady Cook trots out there for the opening series. But I don't think that he is going to play. I think the Vegas line, that's a pretty clear indication of what they think about his health status going into this. And call me crazy, but I think that this is the Jackson Arnold game. I think that this is going to be an opportunity for him where everybody immediately thinks about his performance against Tennessee. You know, the 3 turnovers in the first half, you know, being benched for Michael Hawkins. Ever since he's come back the last couple of starts, he's played much, much better. Really the best that he's looked since the bowl game last year. And I think that Oklahoma is not going to be able to consistently establish the run and break off big chunk plays. But I do think that they will be able to do enough to kind of stay ahead of the chains. And I think that this is going to be a matchup where Jackson Arnold, for Oklahoma to win this football game, he's going to have to make 2 or 3 big plays through the air to propel Oklahoma to a win. I think that he does that. I think that he bounces back, and we come out of this game feeling very excited, feeling very enthusiastic, and we look forward, you know, into what's going to be a 6-4 football team going into a bye week with Alabama and LSU on the other side of it. So again, the fact that I think Drew Pine is going to play, I don't think that they're going to be able to do enough offensively against this Oklahoma defense. Oklahoma 27, Missouri 23.
Next week, we'll be back here on the main line talking about one of 2 situations, like you just mentioned. Either we're making a bowl game, we're looking at the loser of Alabama, LSU, and talking ourselves into, yeah, you know, we could see something happening there possibly, or Oklahoma loses this game, and it's probably a bad situation. We're talking about Brent Venables' job security. We're talking about who's going into the transfer portal. So
what?
Go ahead.
What's the worst case scenario?
OU loses by 3 touchdowns. I don't think that's likely, but I think that's the worst case scenario. Is Oklahoma just is completely unprepared. You get more of that South Carolina game where, you know, there's tons of turnovers. The game gets out of hand very quickly, and then it's played relatively even from that point. And I kind of think this is a very similar game. And how I probably expected the South Carolina game to go is how I think this game will go. Because I trust Jackson Arnold to take care of the ball more handily. And even if he is just getting pummeled, he's getting sacked constantly, you know, I think he'll take care of the ball a little bit better. And so I think it'll be relatively close just because of that factor alone.
Completely agree. As long as we take care of the football, don't turn it over, our defense is going to be able to keep us in this game long enough to where if we can just make a handful of plays at the right time, Oklahoma can win this game. But again, it's been a lot of fun. The storylines going into this one, you know, both personnel, the 2 fan bases going at it, the coaching staff. I just saw on social media, Adam, remember DeMarco Murray back in the offseason? He just tweeted the picture. I think it was a Curtis Lofton standing over Chase Daniels. Yep. Just the picture, no text. We all understood. But yeah, I think call me crazy. I don't really know why I feel confident just because of how bad Oklahoma has been in SEC play. But I think that this one has a little bit more to it. I think that the locker room, I think that the coaching staff, they want this one more than anything else outside of the Texas game. I think Oklahoma goes on the road and gets it done.
Yeah, I think that's the key difference. Oklahoma needs this game. Missouri wants this game. We'll see if that actually plays out on the field, but a pretty key difference there. Thanks, everyone, for making us a part of your weekly routine, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening later on via podcast. We'll be back next week for the next episode of The Main Line.